Teachers, do you have questions about setting up the Dramatic Play Center in your classroom? Are you looking for ways to make your Dramatic Play Center more engaging? Or maybe you just love taking a sneak peek into other teachers' classrooms. If any of these describe you, then you're in the right place. This episode of Elevating Early Childhood is part of a series I'm doing called Learning Center Tours, where I draw back the curtains and give you a sneak peek into each center. So stick around until the very end so you don't miss a thing. So here's a personal story from my own experience about what kind of things and what kind of thought and planning you need to put into your Dramatic Play Center. So one year I moved to a new campus. It was almost a brand new school. And unfortunately, I was one of those teachers that was added to the campus kind of at last minute. Like this wasn't something that, they posted an opening for. It was like a last minute. And so I show up and they had a room for me, right? But it wasn't a regular classroom. It had been their guided reading library. And so there was nothing in it that was age appropriate for my kids. There were no tables and chairs. There was no desk, nothing, anything that you would need, no shelving, nothing. And I kept asking the principal, like, when will I get stuff? And she kept kind of not really answering me. And I started to get like frantic, like I'm not going to have anything, right? So I just started going to all the garage sales and just doing whatever I could because I had the feeling that I wasn't going to get anything. It turns out that I didn't, but I did have a couple of things, right? So some of the kindergarten teachers, this was back when they were starting to like get rid of dramatic play in kindergarten. Some of the kindergarten teachers gave me some things. And so I had a baby doll or two maybe that they gave me because at my previous campus, it was a pre-K center and they had like hashtag all the early childhood stuff you could imagine. And I got a little dramatic play kitchen, which is the one that I showed you in the video. I had that one. That's always been my favorite one. And a couple of things, but basically I even had to make my own shelves out of milk crates. That's how it was. And so there was another teacher there. She was the one who, her class was like way over full and they were gonna, make a new class. And so she came over to my classroom and she said, "Oh, you have 2 brand new baby dolls." And I said, "Oh yes, the kindergarten teacher, or whatever kindergarten teachers it was, donated these to the classroom and I'm, so excited, blah, blah, blah." I was setting up my Dramatic Play Center and she said, "Oh." And then the next morning I came into my classroom. This is before school started. Came into my classroom and the baby dolls were gone. And I asked the kindergarten teachers, I said, "Did you decide you wanted your baby dolls back because they're gone?" And they said, "No, we didn't take them. We don't need them anymore." And I was like, okay. And so I couldn't think of anyone who would take the baby dolls other than the other teacher. And so I asked her and she said, "Oh, well, those were mine to start with. I had given those to the kindergarten teacher." That's me zipping my mouth and throwing the key away because I wasn't going to go there with her. So I went to Goodwill and I found 2 wonderful baby dolls that I loved even more. And one of them still survives today. So anyway, what happened was with that story in relation to having too much stuff out, her Dramatic Play Center was full of stuff. Like she didn't need more baby dolls. She actually needed to like cull that Dramatic Play Center down. It was a hot mess. And so therefore it was always closed and she was always complaining about what a challenge it was for the kids to clean it up. They couldn't keep it clean. She kept closing it. In the back of my mind, I was like, it sounds like maybe you have too much. I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth shut. But, that's what happens when we have too much stuff out in our Dramatic Play Center, especially in the beginning of the year. It is so important to really put that thought and intentional planning into what you put there. And then you have to think about changing up the themes in your Dramatic Play Center to keep things fresh, fun, and engaging for your kids, which can be so time-consuming and expensive. Because if you don't change things up often enough, your kids will be bored. And you and I both know what happens to little kids when they get bored. And listen, I was so guilty about not changing up the themes in my Dramatic Play Center throughout the year. I knew I should do it, but I somehow never found the time. It was like it was too much of a big problem that I couldn't break it down into little steps. And of course, who has the money, right? Because if you teach in a public school, you know you have exactly $0 to work with when it comes to your dramatic play center. I just wish somebody would have given me some helpful ideas, tips, or tricks about changing up this center, but nobody ever did. And that's when I started creating my very own dramatic play themes way back in 2011. And that brings me to cleaning up the dramatic play center. This can be a very tricky thing for young children to do. I used to get so frustrated when my kids would shove the baby dolls in the microwave and the dramatic play clothes into the refrigerator. The thing is, it takes longer to clean up the dramatic play centers, so it's extra important that you have everything labeled and the children understand very clearly where everything goes when they're done playing with it. And you need to model, 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 and practice, practice, practice. So which materials should you put in your dramatic play center at the beginning of the year? I'm going to turn the camera around now and give you a tour of my dramatic play center set up for the very beginning of the school year. So this is the tour of my dramatic play center, and this is my favorite piece of dramatic play furniture ever. I believe it is from Constructive Playthings, and I purchased it not long ago, so like 2021 maybe. At the very top, on the top shelf, you can see two baskets. I got those from the Target Bullseye Playground a couple of years ago, and then the fake plants inside those planters are from IKEA. IKEA has some really cheap fake plants that I like to use, and they last a really long time. And then I found the Home Sweet Home at the Target Bullseye Playground, and I believe that was last year, so that would be 2022 as of this recording. And that's just a sign, a cute sign, and it was just a couple of bucks. So, and I gather these things over the course of several years. So, you know, it's not like I just have to go out and buy all of this from scratch. I add to my collection slowly over the years. And then we have the Dramatic Play Center sign, and that is the pictures for the children and the words are for the adult. And they're basically, we are statements, right? We are developing expressive language, and then it goes on to list all the other things. Then moving down, you can see we have the microwave. It's built in. I love that. And this is what I have out in the beginning of the year. So I have 4 plates, 4 bowls, and 4 cups. That's it. And this particular unit offers a place just to store some of those things. So I like to keep them front and center in front of the kids' line of sight. Then of course we have the stovetop and the sink, and then the little Home Sweet Home picture there, that's an IKEA frame, and the little sign comes from my Dramatic Play home living kit. And then we move down to the bottom half. Okay, this is the beginning of the year. What is in my center? I have a small tub. These tubs are very short, so I think there's space in there for a 14-inch or at least a 12-inch, if not longer, bin. And these are basically like 7-inch bins. So these are very short. I got them at IKEA. That's where I get a lot of things. And then I have some fruit, some vegetables, right? And a little bit of bread. That's all I have out. And it's very easy to put them away because the labels are on the shelf and the label is on the end of the tub. And it's easy with these particular containers I have from IKEA. They slope down in the front, and the reason I like these in the Dramatic Play Center is because it allows you to see better what is inside. So, and when they put them away, they tend to put them away correctly with the sloped side facing front, because it's easy to tell which side is the front, as opposed to regular bins that are the same on both sides. So we've got our labels there. The bottom shelf is empty. Anything more than 3 choices in the beginning of the year of 4-year-old pre-K, in my opinion, is too much. And some would probably argue that 3 choices is too much as well. You know your students best. I chose 3 for this video. You might choose only 1 or 2 tubs of, these are larger things, right? So the vegetables, you can see the corn in there. It's gigantic corn. So there's like 4 vegetables. And the fruit is also the large size fruit. So there's like 2 giant bananas, a giant apple, a giant orange. And then the bread, there's just a few pieces in there, enough to make a hamburger or sandwich, honestly. And now we're gonna move over to the oven portion. So we have the stove on top, we have the knobs, and then we have this shelf. And this is where I keep all of the like cooking utensils and things, but also there are cans. So there's labels there for the things that will come. But in the beginning of the year, I just have the pots and the pans out for them. They don't need anything else at this point in the year because we haven't mastered how to play with what we have yet. So I leave those labels there on the shelf to let them know those things are coming. But for right now, we have some pots and pans. So really, that is also a small box from IKEA, and that one is clear. And so, again, it has labels on the end and on the shelf, so they know exactly where to put the pots and pans. And so that is the extent of what I have in my dramatic play center, aside from the baby dolls. And so I always have plenty of baby dolls to go around. I think that 1 or 2 is not enough unless you have a class of 5. So I have about 5 baby dolls. In the beginning of the year, I put out 2 or 3, and we add as we go. So there you can see what I have in the kitchen for my housekeeping, home living theme at the beginning of the year. The curtains there, those are a cheap dollar store find from Daiso, which is a Japanese dollar store here in the States as well as Japan. And I got those curtains for $1.50, and I just stapled them to the wall. And there's a poster of a window behind the kitchen there. And when I had a different play kitchen, there's a big window you can see there. But now that I have this tall unit, you can no longer see it. So that is basically what I have out at the beginning of the year, y'all. And I gradually add other things in, and we'll talk about those other things in a moment. So I showed this first 10 days of school lesson plan in my block center tour. And this is a freebie. There is a link in the video if you're watching along in the description box below. It's called First 10 Days of School. And if you're listening along, go to Pre-K Pages and type First 10 Days of School. You can use the number 10. And it will pop up and you can grab this free download. And so page 1 is what's in each center in the very first week of school. And so you can see dramatic play is listed on this grid. So it's a 6 grid here. And it basically states what I have out. And it even gives numbers of cups and numbers of plates and pots and pans and things like that. So you have all of that out the first week. And then it also includes your script for introducing it to the kids. What are the words that you say to set your kids up for success all year long in the Dramatic Play Center? The one I'm showing you here on the screen, if you're watching along, is from the Block Center tour, but it's basically the same format. It's actually a script that you can take and make your own, or you can use it verbatim if you have that kind of memory capacity to memorize it. But each of the centers has a script in this freebie, as well as the grid of what should go in each center. And then, of course, I have these I Can cards. The one I'm showing on screen is for the Block Center, but there is also one for Dramatic Play, and it tells the kids what they can do, right? So there's a thumbs up for each thing, and it says, I can, play with baby dolls. I can share. I can whatever. I can clean up. That's usually the last one on there as a visual cue, because young children need those visual cues because they think in pictures until the age of 6. So remember how I said I felt guilty because I didn't change up my dramatic play themes often enough. Well, that's when I started creating them, like I said, back in 2011, and now it's become 27 different themes that we now offer in the shop. And so on the screen, you can see all the wonderful different themes we have. There are themes like baby nursery, car repair, hair salon, laundry, fire station, space station, dinosaur dig, birthday party, restaurant, vet clinic, doctor's office, pumpkin patch, apple orchard, and many more. Each of these dramatic play kits has lots of options available, so they're not just jam-packed for the sake of jam-packing them full of stuff. What they are choices for you to make, because I found in my experience over all these years creating these that if I offer something in black and white only, somebody's going to ask for it in color. If I offer something in color only, somebody's going to ask for it in black and white. So I'm just going to give you all the options. So you have a complete black and white version and a complete color version, if it makes sense. Sometimes there's things that don't make sense to be color, but for the most part, there's both options offered, and of course, lots of different options. So maybe you don't want to have the role-playing prompts like I can do XYZ when I play in the car repair shop, for example, or those types of things. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want the signs with prices on them. Maybe you want this or that. That way you can choose, right? I think the most important thing to know about the Dramatic Play Center, especially in the beginning of the year, is that you add to it gradually over time. So you don't just start out with those few things like I showed you in the previous clip, but you start out with those few things and then you gradually add to it, right? The kids have to show you that they are ready for more. So I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm going to show you what my Dramatic Play Center might look like at a different time of the year, beyond those first days. So here we are, and let's pretend now that it's like October or something like that. Although I don't have it set up for the pumpkin patch, you can see I've added things to it. So at the top shelf, I pretty much keep that the same because it's above their eye level, and pretty much anything above their eye level is decor. So I'm going to keep that top space the same. I still have my dishes there. Now I've added to the countertop, we've got cooking utensils and a pot of soup boiling on the stove, a toaster, and a coffee machine. So I'm going to assume by this point in the year that my students have mastered the art of cleaning up what was in there, and now we've moved on to adding more things. And then down below is where you can see the biggest difference. I've now added 2 tubs on the very bottom shelf. One is favorite foods and the other is dairy. Now favorite foods, if you work in a Head Start program or for one of the programs that uses a proprietary curriculum, then you may not be able to have the favorite foods like pizza and tacos and stuff like that. But I have them here. And then over here on the very left side, I've added a lot more here to the oven area. Yes, they can still cook cakes, pies, and cookies and things like that in the oven, but I utilize it for storage as well. So there we have the cans. So these are canned goods. The utensils, because when they eat, they're going to need them. And I like to put the utensils out much later than the initial introduction to the center, because we have to have lessons about how do we use the utensils and the food, because I want to make sure they're not putting them in their mouth. And so we go over that over and over and over again until I feel like they've got it down and they've been showing me that they're now not putting anything in their mouth. Then I'll introduce the utensils. And then on the bottom we have there's more dishes, of course, because there's always more dishes. And we have those pots and pans again. So you can just see that I have added a lot more down here in the bottom for a little bit later in the year. Now, if I was doing my pumpkin patch theme, I would probably have some of the pumpkin patch things, right? Like the things for the pumpkin cafe or things like that down below as well. And I always keep one space, kind of like the free space, so I can add props like that if I need to for whatever theme it is. So that space on the this bottom shelf here on the left is blank, so I can rotate things out. But once the general foods have been introduced, right, we've got fruit, bread, vegetables, dairy, and then my favorite, which is favorites, And then there's a blank space there. So that's what I keep those 5 out pretty much all year. And then I'll just highlight certain ones. Like if I'm doing a farmer's market theme, I'm going to highlight the fruits and the vegetables, right? If I'm doing a taco truck, I'm going to pull out the tacos from my favorites bin, or the pizza parlor, I'm going to pull out all the pizza pieces, right? All of that stuff is down there. So this is the kitchen unit after the first couple or several weeks of school, depending on when you would like to add them. And usually I will do introductory lessons each time I add something new to this center. I'm going to do an introduction to the thing. Like, this is a coffee maker. What can we do with it? You know, we put in a pod, we push down the thing on the top, we pretend it makes coffee, and then we pretend to drink it, constantly emphasizing the pretend so they don't put their mouth on the cup. This is toast. How do you cook it? Most of them will be familiar with that, depending on where you're located. And we talk about how we put the toast in and we push the thing down and the toast pops up, and how do we do all that, how to stir the soup, how to use the utensils, because they could be used as swords, right? I'm going to do introductory lessons on all of these things. And because I know you want to see the other side of the Dramatic Play Center and not just the kitchen portion, I'm going to turn the camera around again and show you what else I have in this center, aside from the table and chairs, which I was sitting in when I filmed these video clips. Now, I know you're probably wondering what's on the other side of the kitchen, right? So opposite the kitchen, that piece of furniture I just showed you, here is what I have on the other side. There is an IKEA rolling cart. This came from IKEA about 5 or 6 years ago, on the left side of the screen. And in it, I have a bed for the baby dolls, a bunk bed. So I have 3 little babies, and then I have a medium-sized baby and a large baby on the bottom bunk. And then, of course, I have a high chair with a baby there. I do not recommend this high chair. Do not use it. It frustrates the children and me. So if you see it, don't buy it. I need a step 2. Is that what they're called? Step 2, the nice sturdy plastic ones that won't fall down all the time. In the top bin here, in this particular rolling cart here, doesn't have the right number of books for the beginning of the year. I forgot to remove the others at the end of last year, but I have just a few board books because I'm training the kids how to read to the baby dolls before putting them to bed. I add the other books later. So I just have, I think there's 4 board books there. And in the top, there's also a couple of telephones, because they always want to call someone. You got to order pizza when you're in the Dramatic Play Center, right? And then, of course, on the right-hand side, I have the mailbox. And so that is a fancy mailbox from Lakeshore Learning. I believe there are some things worth paying for, and this is one of them. I would prefer to have it mounted on a stand, and so my brother-in-law is going to do that for me someday. But right now it just sits on 4 legs, and it's perfectly fine that way. I just want it to be like a separate stationary thing. And then down below we have a 3-drawer Stairlight unit. I think that's how you say it, from Walmart. I purchased it a couple years ago, but every big box store has them all the time. Inside are clothing for the kids to wear, dress-up clothes, and some accessories. Like there's a cash register and money in the bottom drawer there, in case we want to get it out and pay for things. And then in the top shelf, I've got purses, wallets, key rings, and loyalty cards, and all that kind of stuff that you might want to carry in your purse. I know that the drawers aren't labeled, and I also know that certain proprietary programs will not allow you to store things like this in a drawer container because they want the kids to be seeing them all the time. And I think that if you work in a utopia and you have the perfect classroom, then absolutely go for it. But in my situation, in my setting here, I don't have to follow those rules, so therefore I don't have them hung up on a rack. But I think that's just a little too controlling for my like. So here's the other side, and then there's a pocket chart there. Way over on the right, and that's where when I change the themes, I'll put role-playing directions in there. Like these are the different roles you could play in whatever the theme is. And I also have a bulletin board where I'll have thematic related items up there as well. And then of course I can add my taco stand or my lemonade stand or whatever I want. And that is the tour of my dramatic play center at the beginning of the year. So now I have 3 troubleshooting pro tips for you when it comes to the dramatic play center. So the first pro tip is when it comes to cleaning up, if you want your kids to be more successful, you provide them with a visual model of what a clean center looks like. So you would take a picture with your phone of what the center looks like when it is considered clean, right? And then you take that picture and you put it in the dramatic play center. And you have a lesson on this is what it looks like when it's clean. So when you're done putting your things away, look at this picture and see if it matches. Now, you don't expect them to do that 100% because that would be silly, but they're going to aim for getting things in the general location correctly. Like I don't care if the baby dolls aren't covered up with a blanket and they're, both heads are facing the same direction. If they throw the baby dolls into the baby bed, I'm good with that, right? We have to adjust our expectations because they are young children, right? And it's not going to be picture perfect every time. And troubleshooting pro tip number 2 is never shut down the dramatic play center as punishment. Because what we are saying is that play is the extra thing we're doing in the classroom. And if we don't play the way we tell them to, then as a punishment, they get their play taken away. But instead, remember that play is the work of young children, right? It is through the dramatic play that they are getting support in developing all the different domains. The dramatic play center can support every single domain there is. So we don't take that opportunity away from our kids. Instead, we use the information, right, about the center being too messy to inform our reaction, right? So we're going to take that information in and we're going to say, okay, let's see, it's too messy. What can I do differently, right? Have I revisited the routine for playing in this center lately? That's the first question I would ask. And then, if the answer is no, then I'm going to revisit the routine and I'm going to revisit the cleanup routine in particular, right? When we hear the sound, what do we do? Where do we put these things? Show me where. It's going to be a whole group lesson just like we did at the beginning of the year. And chances are, you don't need to do that. You don't need to hit it super hard and do it, to the full extent every single day of a week or something like that. But you're just going to revisit it with all the children. And then you'll say at the end of that revisiting session, and now today, when you go to that center, I'm going to be looking for children at cleanup time. If you're playing there, I'm going to be looking to see if you remember how to clean up. Don't forget, you're going to look at the reset picture, right? So you have that photo there. And you're going to look at the labels on the ends of the tubs and the labels on the shelves so you know where things go. Now, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, in my house, we don't put babies in the microwave, and I don't put my clothes in the refrigerator. Do you? And they say no, and I say, well, then let's not do it in our pretend center either. And so that is one way to combat my center is always messy, but we don't want to close it and rob the children of the opportunities for learning and communication and all the other things that come along with dramatic play. And number 3, my troubleshooting pro tip is, what if cleaning up the dramatic play center is taking too long? Because this is a real problem, right? So the first thing I would do if it takes too long to clean up the dramatic play center is to think about giving the children in that center, and the block center too, a little extra heads up. Like just a walk by really quickly and just say, just so you know, we're going to have the sound play or cleanup or whatever it is that you say to indicate cleanup time is coming very soon. And so those of you playing here know that it takes a long time to clean up. So what should you start doing now so you'll be ready to clean up the rest when I play the sound or the music or whatever it is you use? I would give them an extra upfront warning so it doesn't come as a surprise to them, because think about it for a minute. The block center and the dramatic play center are the 2 centers where your students are most engaged, right? And so it makes sense that bringing them out of that play state is going to be really difficult. That's why they continue to play there, right? They weren't finished in their eyes. So that's also when we have to think about giving them longer times to play. The ideal time at, it's 60 minutes or longer if you can support that within the system that you work in, right? And the very last pro tip that I have, this is a bonus pro tip because I promised you 3 and I have 4. Where do you find the stuff to put in your centers, your dramatic play centers? So, number 1 place to find the kind of things that you can get really inexpensively that you can put in to enhance your play. So I'm talking about things like the apple orchard. That is always one of our favorite back to school themes. You can get a lot of that stuff at the Target Bullseye Playground. They usually will have some kind of an apple or fall type theme going on in that section in the very front of the store. And you can find really great things for a cheap price. I've got all kinds of signs, apple orchard signs, fresh baked apple pie types of signs, dish towels, all kinds of cool stuff. And the same goes for pumpkins. So if you're doing a pumpkin patch, they will usually have a lot of pumpkin stuff there, fake pumpkins, signs that say pumpkin patch, pumpkin pie, and all that good stuff. So you can find a lot of things for your play center there, as well as the other dollar stores like Dollar Tree. They have lots of great seasonal stuff that you can use. So you don't have to go all out, and buy all of the expensive fancy things. You can do a lot of this on a budget. And of course, my very favorite part of stocking the centers is going to garage sales and tag sales, yard sales, if you will. And that's where I find some of the best stuff, because the good thing about dramatic play when it comes to garage sales is that all little kids grow out of their dramatic play stuff they have at home, right? And so what happens to all that stuff? The parents get rid of it. Sometimes they give it to their friends and family, which is great. Recycle, reuse, all that good stuff. But sometimes they get rid of it at garage sales, and that's when you can really strike some gold. So that brings me to, where do I store all this stuff, right? Now you've amassed all these wonderful things to go into your dramatic play center for all these different themes. How do you store them and organize them all, right? And I think all of us can say that we struggle to store all the things we need to do our jobs well when it comes to teaching pre-K and preschool. So my number 1 tip is to organize it all in boxes. I like to use plastic boxes because I live in a humid environment. And when I lived in Texas, I also used plastic because I found that spiders like to get into the cardboard boxes. And in Texas, that's a very bad thing. So that's how I store them. There is a video tour of how I store and organize my dramatic play kit boxes. I'll put a link to that video below in the description box, directly below this video. If you're subscribed to my channel, you can just go to the channel homepage and you can scroll down to find it there as well. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my dramatic play center. Be sure that you're subscribed to Elevating Early Childhood here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss a thing, especially our next center tours. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin. Onward and upward.